This is how you make easy lemon muffins. Hi, my name is Jeevan Man, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a simple beginner-friendly recipe of lemon muffins. So before we start baking, we want to make sure our hands are washed, our hair is tied up if we have long hair like myself, and then we also want to make sure we're wearing clothes or an apron that is not gonna get in our food. And then the apron is just better for yourself so you don't get anything on you and so your clothes don't go onto your baking. But if you have clothes that won't be really baggy and get into your way or into your baking, then you'll be fine. So before we start our batter, I'm going to grease our pan. Today I'm just using a regular muffin pan. These are just regular size, they're on medium sized muffins. And we're making 12 today in our recipe. And I also just preheated my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And now I'm gonna spray my pan with cooking spray. This is just canola oil. And I'm just gonna lightly grease it. You could also use muffin liners or cupcake liners and just put one in each. But if you don't have that, don't worry and just use some type of oil that you can lightly grease your pan with. So the first thing we're gonna add for our wet ingredients is 1 cup of milk. You can use any kind of milk, it's up to you, your preference. I'm just using 1% milk today. Now I'm adding 1/3 a cup of oil and 1 egg. Make sure you get no shells because no one wants shells in their muffins. Now we're just adding 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm just using store-bought lemon juice. You can also use fresh lemon juice. It's around 1 lemon, that's 3 tablespoons. But you could also skip the lemon juice and put any different flavorings like chocolate chips, bananas you can add vanilla and just make it a plain vanilla muffin. You can really add whatever your heart desires, but I'm gonna do lemon today. And the last thing we are adding to the wet mixture is 1/4 a cup of granulated sugar. Now you can just whisk all the wet ingredients together. Make sure your egg is getting broken up, especially the yolk, into the rest of the liquids. And you want to make sure your sugar is getting dissolved so there's not just like big clumps of sugar. It should look like that. So to the dry ingredients, I added 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And now I'm adding regular all-purpose flour to this. We're gonna do 2 cups of the flour. Now I just added a teaspoon of salt and we are gonna just mix this up. I'm mixing it up with a hard spatula so it's not very flimsy or anything. It's pretty stiff. And you could also mix this up with a wooden spoon or a fork, up to you. And at this point you can also add poppy seeds if you want to make it a lemon poppy seed muffin, but I'm just gonna keep it a plain lemon muffin right now. You can also add in blueberries. That would be good for a blueberry lemon muffin or any other fruit or topping you would want. And you want to mix this just so there's an even amount of ingredients everywhere so you're not just getting a bite with a bunch of baking powder in it and that one muffin just has an uneven amount of baking powder or baking soda and it tastes off and also looks off. So you just want to make sure it's evenly distributed. So now that we have both the wet and the dry ingredients, we can just put the wet into the dry ingredients. So I like to just make like a little well for my wet ingredients to go into my dry ingredients. This is not really necessary, but I just like to do that. And then it should look like that. And I just slowly pour in my wet ingredients, making sure I scrape down the bowl so we are getting all the wet ingredients in here. Now just carefully mix the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients and it should start coming together nicely. It's okay if there's a little bit of clumps. You don't want to overmix the batter, so I'd rather there be some clumps than overmixing the batter and the muffins end up turning flat or not really good. Make sure you scrape and get all the flour off the sides and the bottom. This is how your batter should look. It should be a little thick, like this. It shouldn't be too thick where it is looking like an actual dough, but it shouldn't be watery really. It should just have this kind of texture. So now we can transport our batter into the containers. So I'm just gonna do this by taking a spoon. I'm taking a bigger spoon, so it's kind of like a tablespoon, and I'm just scooping it up and then transferring it into my muffin tin. I'm gonna do around 2 scoops in each tin, and you just want to make them as even as possible. That's how one should be looking. This is how they should look. They should be pretty even. They don't have to be perfect. And now you can just stick them in your oven. Make sure they're towards the back of the oven on the middle rack, because that's where the most heat is. And you're just gonna put them in for around 15 minutes. You want them to be golden brown. And you also wanna check with a toothpick and make sure your toothpick comes out clean. I like to put it in the middle of the muffin and then take it out and make sure there's no dough sticking or batter that's not cooked. Based on your preference, you can put a little bit of sugar on top of your muffins, around half a teaspoon each, before they go out in the oven. And that just makes them a little sweeter, and it also gives a nice texture at the top of them, and it looks really nice. So my muffins are out of the oven and they've been cooling for around 10 minutes. This is how they are looking. Now we are gonna move the muffins from their pan to somewhere where they can cool. I'm just putting mine on a cutting board. So I like to take mine out by making sure I get all the edges off of the pan. So I like to take a regular butter knife like this, or you can take a little like offset spatula, and you just want to go around the edges of the muffin and make sure none is sticking. This one seems like it's not sticking at all. And then when you know it's not going to be sticking, you can just take it off, and that's how your muffin should look. And just repeat that for all of them. This is how my muffins look out of the pan and all done. They're very cute and they were very easy to make. Thank you for watching.